welcome. I'm Geeta Mohan and you're watching World Today. Now, it's the proverbial night before the crucial US-Ukraine talks to be held in Saudi Arabia. President Volodymyr Zelensky has traveled to Saudi Arabia to meet Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Saudi Arabia has played various mediating roles since Russia's 2020 invasion, including brokering prisoner exchanges and hosting talks between Russia and the United States of America last month. Tuesday's talks between the US and Ukrainian officials, the first official meeting since the disastrous Oval Office encounter between Zelensky and Donald Trump, are expected to focus on bilateral minerals deal and how to end the war. Under huge pressure from Trump, who wants the war ended at lightning speed, Zelensky has been at pains to show they are on the same page, despite failing to win US security guarantees that Kyiv sees as vital to any peace deal. The United States of America, once Ukraine's main ally, has upended its wartime policies in its stated pursuit of a rapid end to fighting, engaging directly with Moscow while cutting off military assistance and intelligence sharing for Kyiv.
Well, I think they will sign the minerals deal, but I want them to want peace. Right now,
how do they show that? How do they show they want peace?
Well, right now they haven't shown it to the extent that they should. I think right now they haven't, but I think they will be, and I think it's going to become evident over the next 2 or 3 days. I think eventually, look, we have to have peace, and I'm doing this. Money is one thing. We're going to lose. They spent $350 billion on this, but the big thing, human life. Thousands of people this week, thousands of young soldiers died this week. Hundreds of people died in cities in Ukraine. And we got to get it stopped. It would have never happened if I was president, and it didn't happen. This was not going to happen. By the way, October 7th wouldn't have happened. Inflation wouldn't have happened.
This is what AP News Director for Gulf and Iran, John Gambrell, predicts for the US-Ukraine talks to be held tomorrow in Saudi Arabia.
Saudi Arabia is going to host a key meeting between the Ukrainians and the Americans over the ongoing Russian war on that country. And both those two countries, as well as Saudi Arabia, are looking to really come out ahead from these talks. First, the Ukrainians. They are trying to recover after that disastrous meeting that President Volodymyr Zelensky had in the Oval Office last month that descended into an argument between him, President Donald Trump, and Vice President J.D. Vance. They're looking to sign, likely in the coming weeks, a rare earths mineral deal that the Trump administration had sought, and the Ukrainians are likely really hoping to turn back on American military aid as well as American intelligence sharing to counter the Russians. For the Americans, they want to push forward with what Donald Trump wants, which is this peace deal, these peace talks between him and Russian President Vladimir Putin. Now, so far, Trump has been really conciliatory towards Putin. That's raised the concerns of Europeans who are increasing their defense spending. But Trump as well in the last couple of days has threatened the Russians with new economic sanctions.
Meanwhile, Russian forces on Sunday recaptured 3 more settlements in Kursk after special forces crept in for miles through a gas pipeline near the town of Sudza in an attempt to surprise Ukrainian forces. Russian advances in 2024 and Trump's upending of US policy on Ukraine have raised fears among European leaders that Ukraine will indeed lose the war and that Trump is turning his back on Europe. Here's a report.
Russia's defense ministry released video on 9th March of what is said to be suicide drone strikes on a Ukrainian military column in Russia's Kursk region. A day before Ukraine's air assault forces published drone footage showing artillery fire targeting Russian soldiers using a gas pipeline to enter Ukrainian-held territory near the Kursk region in Russia. On Monday, Russian forces advanced further in the Kursk region and curled behind Ukrainian forces. This is a major encirclement operation aimed at forcing thousands of Ukrainian soldiers to either flee or surrender in western Russia. A day to go before the US-Ukraine talks, the war continues unabated.
Здесь не важно, что мы ждем. Здесь важно, что ждут Соединенные Штаты.
It is not important what we expect. It is important what the United States expects. We have already heard the statements at various levels that the United States is waiting for the Ukrainians to demonstrate that they are willing to make peace. It is in fact probably what everyone is waiting for. If the members of the Kyiv regime really want peace or if they don't. Of course, it is very important and it needs to be determined.
С этим, конечно, очень важно и нужно определить.
Ukrainian troops seized about 1,300 square kilometers of Russia's Kursk region last August. Kiev said it was an attempt to gain a bargaining chip in future negotiations and to force Russia to shift forces from eastern Ukraine. But by mid-February, Russia had taken back at least 800 square kilometers. And in recent days, Moscow launched a major paratrooper offensive from multiple directions that threatens to cut off Ukraine's supply lines and potential routes of withdrawal. Europe is still standing strong by Ukraine as the US pushes Kiev to peace negotiation. Continuing with its previous stand, the EU has announced to entirely phase out the supply of Russian gas.
It's worth to look at the political guidelines where I commit very clearly to phasing out the Russian gas, and I stay, of course, committed to that one. This is an absolute must. We've been successful, but we always see, of course, that there are loopholes where we have to be careful and we have to work on.
European leaders at last week's summit backed plans to spend more on defense and continue to stand by Ukraine in a world upended by Trump's reversal of US policies. Bureau Report, India Today.
Now, the US government has already revoked some access to satellite imagery for Ukraine and paused intelligence sharing. Elon Musk's Starlink provides crucial internet connectivity to Ukraine and its military. Poland pays for Kyiv to use the services of Elon Musk's Starlink. The Doge head said in a post on social media, that is the X platform, early on Sunday, that Ukraine's entire front line would collapse if I turned it off. In response, Poland's Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski wrote on X, and I quote, "Starlinks for Ukraine are paid for by the Polish Digitization Ministry at the cost of about $50 million per year. The ethics of threatening the victim of aggression apart, if SpaceX proves to be an unreliable provider, we will be forced to look for other suppliers." This led to a series of posts on X on the subject that lasted through the day. Elon Musk later said that he would not turn off Starlink in Ukraine, but the debate didn't end there. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio accused Poland's foreign minister of, and I quote, "making things up," and suggested on Sunday that he was ungrateful in a strong rebuke, again on social media platform X. The extraordinary social media spat took another turn on Monday when Poland's prime minister called on friends to respect their allies and not be arrogant in a post on X which mentioned no one by name, but came a day after the extraordinary social media spat between top US and Polish officials over Starlink. Now, since Donald Trump's inauguration in January, the economic policy uncertainty index of the US has spiked 41% to a level of 334.5. In the past, this usually signaled recession. For his part, the American president seems comfortable with the uncertainty that he's generating, saying that any financial pain from import taxes is a mere disruption that will eventually lead to more factories relocating to the United States of America and stronger growth. Here's a report.
On Monday, European shares dropped after a mixed trading session in Asia over US President Donald Trump's tariff uncertainties. Soon after, the Wall Street also responded with early sell-off. Trump's shifting trade policies fuel economic uncertainty and market volatility. The American president defended his aggressive tariff strategy while acknowledging the potential for short-term instability.
I'll tell you what, of course you hesitate. Who knows? All I know is this, we're going to take in hundreds of millions of dollars in tariffs, and we're going to become so rich, you're not going to know where to spend all that money. I'm telling you, you just watch. We're going to have jobs, we're going to have open factories, it's going to be great.
The Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta recently issued a warning that the U.S. economy could contract in the first quarter, heightening fears of a downturn. Donald Trump's trade war has seen steep tariffs imposed on imports from Canada, Mexico, and China, creating uncertainty in global markets.
I traveled to U.S. last month. I was seeking constructive dialogue to avoid the unnecessary pain of measures and countermeasures. We jointly identified a few areas that would allow us to move forward by fostering mutual benefits. But in the end, as it said, one hand cannot clap. The U.S. administration does not seem to be engaging to make a deal.
His tariffs on aluminium and steel imports will come into force on 12th March, despite a reprieve on tariffs from other imports. The U.S. is the world's largest aluminium importer and the second largest steel importer, with more than half of those volumes coming from Canada, Mexico, and Brazil.
Administration over the coming weeks to highlight the negative impacts on Americans and Canadians of these unacceptable tariffs. We'll also be working with our international partners and friends, and if it comes to that, our response, of course, will be firm and clear.
Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum has said that due to the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement, Mexico would not tax products coming in from the U.S. and hopes that that will help it evade the reciprocal tariff. But its auto sector remains vulnerable to Trump tariff war.
We estimate that around 10%, 12% at most, are the ones that may have difficulties complying with the rules of the treaty. We already have news of some, especially automotive industry. That's where I think there will be the highest prevalence of that 10 to 12%. So we are going to work with these companies as well.
With this flurry of tariffs, government layoffs and spending freezes, there are growing worries that the U.S. president may be doing more to harm the American economy than to fix it. Bureau Report, India Today.
The landslide victory of Mark Carney as the new Prime Minister of Canada is set to mark a new shift in the political landscape of North America. Mark Carney, former Bank of Canada governor, has won Liberal leadership, succeeding Prime Minister Justin Trudeau ahead of general elections in the country. As the country deals with U.S. President Donald Trump's trade war and annexation threat, and a federal election looms, 59-year-old Carney has a tough task to deliver for his party. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced his resignation in January, leading to Carney's landslide victory with 85.9% of the vote. And he vowed to continue to fight the U.S. tariff in the same line as his predecessor. And within hours, Canadian province of Ontario applied 25% electricity surcharge to U.S. in response to Trump's tariff war.
My government will put into action our plan to build a stronger economy, to create new trading relationships with reliable trading partners, and to secure our borders. There's someone who's trying to do the opposite. There's someone who's trying to weaken our economy. Donald Trump. Donald Trump. And Donald Trump, as we know, has put, as the Prime Minister just said, unjustified tariffs on what we build, on what we sell, on how we make a living. He's attacking Canadian families, workers, and businesses, and we cannot let him succeed. And we won't. We won't. The Canadian government has rightly retaliated and is rightly retaliating with our own tariffs that will have maximum impact in the United States and minimum impact here in Canada. And my government will keep our tariffs on until the Americans show us respect.
Now, Now, Mark Carney's leadership comes at a time when Canada-India relations are at their lowest, primarily over the Khalistan movement in Canada. Canada-India ties hit a low in 2023 due to Trudeau's accusations about India's role in Hardeep Singh Nijjar's killing. Nijjar was shot and killed in a parking lot of a Gurudwara on the 18th of June in 2023. Diplomatic tensions escalated more when both countries expelled their diplomats. Although Carney has not publicly commented on the Khalistan issue, he might have a tough time addressing concerns regarding Khalistani sympathizers within his own Liberal Party. However, his strong economic background could revive stalled trade talks with India since 2023. Carney has promised to rebuild Indo-Canadian trade ties if elected as PM. Justin Trudeau's exit presents an opportunity for both nations to reset their relations.
Is to diversify our trading relationships, there's with like-minded countries, and there are opportunities to rebuild the relationships with India. There needs to be a shared sense of values around that commercial relationship, and if I am Prime Minister, I look forward to the opportunity to build that.
The death toll from nearly 4 days of clashes between Syrian security forces and loyalists of ousted President Bashar al-Assad and revenge killings that followed has risen to more than 1,000, making it one of the deadliest acts of violence since Syria's conflict began 14 years ago. Clashes between Assad loyalists and the country's new Islamist rulers in the former president's coastal heartland started last Thursday, killing mostly civilians as reported by a war monitoring group. Though today, the Syrian Defense Ministry claimed that the military operation against Bashar loyalists has been completed, reports of violent clashes are still being reported from different parts of the country.
Syria is burning once again, in worst violent clashes since last December, when insurgents led by the Islamist group Hayat Tahrir al-Sham or HTS overthrew Bashar al-Assad. An ambush on the Syrian security patrol by gunmen loyal to oust leader Assad escalated into horrific violent clashes. A war monitor estimates the latest spurt of violence has killed more than 1,000 people over 4 days.
Why is there fighting? We don't understand. Why are they fighting? What for? What are their demands? What do they want? They should be wise and maintain their lives, their children's lives and properties, because this is useless. It is a big mistake.
Syrian security sources said at least 200 of their members were killed in the clashes. The counter-offensive against the Assad loyalists in the largely Alawite coastal region brought havoc to several cities and towns. Rights group reported dozens of revenge killings resulting from Sunni militants targeting the minority Islamic sect, regardless of whether they were involved in the insurgency.
I stress to them not to allow anyone to exaggerate or overreact and to work to prevent that. We will continue to pursue the remnants of the fallen regime, those who refused but to continue their oppression and tyranny, those who committed crimes against the people, and those who seek to undermine security and civil peace. We will bring them to a fair court.
The United Nations called on all parties to cease hostilities. But violence continues in some parts, while in others there is an eerie calmness of curfew as Syria once again boils. Bureau Report, India Today.